What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about shimming your tail. Just to be clear, there's some amazing content out there on tail shimming, and I love it, but I will say that sometimes it gets a little confusing if you don't completely understand all of the verbiage that they are speaking about. It's very technical, so I am here to give you a super duper dumbed down version of just that. I am also going to be strictly only doing this in the surf, so I will be prone surfing, which will give a little bit of a different way of looking at things when you're mixing in how to pop up with negative or positive tail shim, going through turbulence, pumping, and then going down the wave, and then also whitewater hits as well. But yeah, I'm gonna go jump in the water. Let's get to it.
So let me start off with, these are not the best foiling conditions, but they are the most consistent for myself and actually a good majority of the viewers. It's a little windy, a little too low, and a bit of funk in the current. But actually this is great for comparing and contrasting feels on foil. And just for reference, I am riding the Omen Flux, which is 36 liters, and the Operator 1050 with the large ahi tail. If you're interested in knowing more information about Omen, I've done 2 reviews of their products, and you can check out their website in my notes. So I'm starting with a positive 0.5 shim because that is actually what I've been liking. You can see a little bit of swell gets me up and moving. Gliding out the back into my first pump, which has a lower cadence and speed, but is nice and high, so I'm not dropping out. So what I really like about a little bit of positive tail shim is the pivot in the turn. It feels more heel to toe, and since you're naturally higher out of the water, you don't touch down as much. You can see in this turn how I am staying high through the wave face, and my bank angle is setting me up for the next move, which again has a little more pivot off the bottom turn. Although sloppy, even with my weight pushed forward, I was still able to recover out of the foam. Then I ran out of water. But with that said, having more positive shim, you do have to be aware of how high your mass is going to be going down the wave. But do you see the little snap that is done in the redirection back into the wave? I owe a little bit to the shape of the Omen Flux, but also a little bit of shim allows more angles and snap. A little help with lift also allows me to blow through whitewater sideways too. Although a much slower cadence, you can start to notice how narrow my feet get and how slow my pump is getting. So this is my first wave with no shim at all. So the tail is set to 0 degree. You can see I need a little bit of help. I just have to do a little bit more of an ollie to get up onto plane, and then a little bit more speed in my pump. But my brain is trying to figure out where to put my feet, and my stance is a little wider than before. Okay, I'm actually pretty happy with this turn, but I touched down, so lost a little speed. Pump is a little faster and able to stay high and glide a bit. I'm now pumping into the wind, and most likely would not be able to do this with a positive shim, or at least go as far. But now the moment of truth. Can I stay above the whitewater? And no. So what I can take away from the 0 degree is, yes, the pump is better, but the pivot is just not there. It feels like my turns are carving more than pivoting up and down the wave. I have to keep the cadence higher, and that mast has to stay a little further out of the water more. Alright, so first wave with the negative 0.5 shim, and I can barely keep the foil engaged. The turbulence slowed me down, and I lost cadence. This is the second wave, and I kind of worked out the kinks. It's obviously needing more effort to keep the foil up at first, but once it's up to speed, it is much faster. Again, turns have less of a pivot, but I do feel that they're a little smoother, and less pumping to stay engaged in the wave, and then gliding out, just staying high on the mast until I really need to pump. But I lost all the momentum in that turn. Again, pumping feels much faster, but I am applying more back foot pressure in the overall ride, and especially on these turns back into the face. So now that I kind of got the footing right, my pop-up is going higher on the mast, and I'm gliding right out the back. But watch as I hit that little swell line and lose all my momentum. Grave digging, then using the height of the wave to keep my mast high and get back up to efficiency. Almost losing it again, but then having that mast pop up and just gliding through. Last wave with the negative 0.5 shim, and if I'm being honest, I'm kind of over it. That exit from the wave was pretty ugly, and I really would only use a negative shim if it was much bigger. But again, the reason for this video is to allow you to see how tail shims affect the foil in these conditions. Although I can use the excuse that I have been running positive shims recently, my mast is really low in the water. So technically, I'm negatively affecting my experience. Until now, because my mast is high, and I have the swell in my favor, and I'm gliding much faster, but at the price of a bit of wobble from the speed. At this point, which is wave number 4, I'm starting to adjust, but I just don't really love it. So after that last one, I decided to go back to the positive 0.5 and see how it feels. So back to what feels normal to me, the positive shim is a little more sensitive toe to heel pressure, so pumping out is a touch awkward. I'm starting to gain momentum, but I'm starting to remember that I'll need to apply more front foot pressure so I don't breach. With this extra lift, I was able to make this drop and not get stuck on the top of the wave. My pumping cadence is slower, but I am feeling less energy to keep the foil moving. And you can really see how much closer my feet are with the positive shim. And again, I would have gotten stuck with less shim on the face. Although I don't love to show my sloppy footage, it's important to show this sloppy whitewater hit. Keep in mind, I haven't mastered these at all, but I quickly recovered and kept my board dry. And I do owe that to the 0.5 positive shim. Little tip breach, but controlled, and again, that board is nice and high coming down the wave. Then these are my favorite, and I owe the positive shim to it. It's almost a pump up the wave to angle back down. It feels similar to highlining on a surfboard or pumping a skateboard in the bowl. So before we go into key moments, let's keep in mind that my kit is most likely way different than yours. My mast is placed way further back than most people, and for most people, if they place their mast that far back, they would probably need a lot of positive shim just to get on foil. So with trying to explain what works best with everything, I decided to explain everything in categories that I feel apply to prone foiling. So let's start with maneuverability. So with a positive shim, it feels slower and way more surfy. So if you're trying to stay in the pocket, it definitely does not hurt. Plus, I think you don't have to go as offset in your stance to get it to roll. Positive shim gives more pivot, where negative will have a little bit more of a locked-in feeling, a little bit more of a carvy turn instead of a pivot turn. Turbulence is much easier to go through with positive shim due to a lower stall speed, and the mast does not need to be as high. But if you have a lot of speed due to a negative shim, you will most likely just cruise through most of the turbulent water. Pumping with a positive shim, you're able to keep your feet closer, which to me uses less energy. With that said, a big con is going to be lack of glide and speed when needed. Pop up. This is where it starts to get a little interesting, because do you tune your foil to make it easier to pop up or for pumping and surfing? So here's my idea or approach, and some will think that it's a good idea and some will disagree. So I will tail shim accordingly in different power size surf. If it's big, I might go negative, so I'm able to not get blasted out of the water when I pop up. If it's small, which it normally is, I'll shim neutral or positive, really depending on wave consistency in the set. Some will move their mast back or forward to change the front foot, back foot pressure, but then my pop up and board balance is off. So instead, I kind of stick to what is normal for me to change if really needed. Maybe using a negative shim in the surf is not the best if you're pumping out and staying in the surf line, but if you're being towed or downwinding or even little shore runners, a negative shim can help.
Well, that's my thoughts on shimming your tail, how it can help you out. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Please like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And hope to see you guys soon. Peace.